Many of these spiritual ideas that we have really are not to be understood just through the brain. They have to be felt somehow. This whole idea of transcendence is a wonderful concept, wonderful idea. And this is what comes through from the Song of Samadhi. Just something, a state that's beyond everything. It leaves this whole world behind, even just momentarily. This state of absolute transcendence, and this is so beautiful. Swamiji's original language, just stunning to think that at that young age that he composed something like this, and just after he had that experience. That's the special feature of this. It was through that inspiration. Many of his poems were like that. We know Kali the Mother especially, but this also directly came out of that experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and that's why it's so valuable for us. Okay, so we finished that very important first line. I spent extra time on it, of course, because I felt that it is very special. Now we'll get to this Bhashe Bome Chaya Shamo Chobi Visho Chora Choro. This universe, Vishwa, this is a common term for universe, meaning everything. The moving and the unmoving, the animate and the inanimate, whatever exists, Bome Bhashi, floats in space. Now, we're going to get a couple of different meanings of what is this floating in space. But anyhow, we simply have it floats in space. This term, vyoma, it means air, it means space, it means ether, one of the elements that we have. Here we get the impression of real physical space. We're talking about this whole universe. Why? He says it floats. We'll see that this idea of space, physical space, or the space of consciousness, these two ideas will kind of float back and forth. What we now call physical space, from a higher point of view, we may see as within the space of the cosmic mind, something like that. But we have this concept of ether, and many ancient traditions had it. We hear of the four elements. The ancient Greeks also had this fifth, earth, air, fire, water, but they would add ether to it, and it's a very interesting concept because it's very similar to air. That's the closest, and we often don't distinguish between air or atmosphere and space, empty space. In fact, we use it the same way. We explore space, and we go into the atmosphere, we go into outer space, but this concept of space is empty space, ether. Perfectly empty space, which turns it almost into an abstract concept, except that without the idea of empty space, we can't have the idea of space at all. Everything that exists in space exists in empty space, because otherwise there wouldn't be room for it. Right? We have a chair. That chair has to be in an empty space. Right? Suppose you want to sit in a chair, and somebody says, well, you can sit there, there's somebody already sitting there. You can't sit there. So every time there's some empirical space, there's also empty space. They're coextensive. They have to exist. Of course, it doesn't make sense to say space exists in space, but they occupy the same space somehow. These are the two elements that we can say that perfectly overlap. Now, this concept of ether came in order to explain emptiness. If we don't have this idea of gaps or space, then everything is touching. So the ancients, they tried to come up with some way, and Greeks and others, they thought that it was a real element. A real element. We understand it now more in terms of just emptiness. But the space and ether, or air and ether, the relationship between them is very important because it mirrors the relationship between thought and consciousness. And we find that Swamiji himself uses these terms, Chidakasha and Chittakasha. Akasha means space or ether, and there's the space of Chitta, space of the mind, and space of Chid, of pure consciousness. So it turns out that these two especially are very important in our understanding of this relationship. So just as I was saying, we can't have the concept of something occupying space without the concept of empty space. And we can't even have the concept of existing things, of a whole universe, without the idea of gaps in between. In the same way, even to have a thought, to have a perception, it has to take place within the space of consciousness, and there'll be gaps in between. So everything that gives the appearance of something solid. The most solid thing we can think of, we know that if we analyze it and we get a very high-powered microscope on it, it's mostly space. Right? Huge gaps in between things that seem to be very solid. So there's no such thing as something that's absolutely solid. If we go further and further, we just find particles and energy and things flying around, which I don't understand at all. I'm not science isn't my field whatsoever, but we can break everything down to these atoms and molecules and little particles and quirks and quarks and things, right? That so that we see that there's nothing really terribly solid about solid things. So we have the same thing with consciousness and with thought and perception. It's common with everything. If we see a movie, right, it looks like it's a continuous stream, but it's not. We know that there's one little cell, and then a little gap, and the gap in between is so short, and it goes so fast, it gives the appearance of continuity. So we have this with thought also. It's a santati. The term, just as a father has a son, has a son, has a son, has a son. There are huge gaps in between. It doesn't happen right away, but we talk about it as continuous. So this continuous flow of thought that we have is not a continuous flow of thought. We tried to do it. We have this idea of taila dharava, that it should be like oil poured from one vessel to another, but in reality, there are little gaps in between. And something that I heard, of course, many people say it, but I heard it first from Swami Vivekananda, that God is to be found in that space between two thoughts. The silence, that emptiness between two thoughts. And if we ever wonder, does consciousness function when the mind isn't functioning, is constantly it's aware of that gap, but the gap becomes so small that it gets glossed over somehow. So this idea of the ether, of pure space, empty space, is also an idea of transcendence, because this is the hole in the donut. This is it doesn't occupy any particular location. It's really beyond time and space. So this consciousness has no special location anywhere. When we give it a location, it's because we've connected it to the mind somehow, and the mind gets connected to the senses, and we have perception and we have cognition, both of these things. Now, Swamiji says, and remember, this is in his meditative state. So, whether this is when he's going deeper and deeper into meditation, whether this is even with eyes open, he'll see this universe rising and falling. This isn't exactly clear at this point, because, as I say, we'll get two different statements about this, but he says it's floating. And we can think of it as kind of a boat at sea, supported by the ocean. So everything that we experience is supported by consciousness. Even if we think of this idea of this universe as a projection of consciousness, it's not like somebody shooting an arrow that gets projected out of a bow. That consciousness may project it, but consciousness has to be there the whole time, supporting it. So it's also the ground. And in this case, we can say it's the ground. It's like the ocean with the boat that's floating on it. Chaya Shomo. Now, Swamiji is getting to this point where it looks like a shadow, shadow-like, phantom-like. The literal term is shadow, chaya. So, chaya shamo, an appearance without any substance, dream-like, we can say. I always liked that childhood nursery rhyme, that row, row, row your boat. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. This is that whole idea that the whole, what we call this universe, what we call life, is just this floating, dreamlike thing. And what is it floating down? Time. Because consciousness and time and mind, these are all related things. We're floating down this river of time. We're rowing our boat. If we do it that way, looking at it as just this pleasure trip that we're taking, this little voyage, nothing too serious, then you see life is but a dream, then it becomes a joyful type of thing. So, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. You can do a series of lectures on this. Yeah, he'll get 4 lectures out of this. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Right? So it's a beautiful, beautiful idea. I mean, that's also a beautiful meditation.
I say row, row, row the boat.
Yeah.
Steadily up the stream.
Up the stream. Yeah, this is the other thing that Swamiji says, we go against nature to have this realization. But those who have this realization, after going up the stream, then we float back down the stream. Anuloma viloma. Like Swamiji talks about that. Now, this next line is virtually the same. With one big exception, we find that again, samsara and jagat, they both mean this kind of going around and moving and everything. Here he says it's floating in space, akasha, but this is mental space, right? And the line before that, he simply says that that there's phantom-like, is floating in space. Now he says oshputo mono akasha, right? So the space of the involute mind. Involute, literally it means unmanifest. It hasn't yet blossomed forth. We can say that this is somehow this universal unconscious, this mahalaya, this vast storehouse mind, this cosmic consciousness in which everything exists in an unmanifest state. If we have a dream, where does the stuff of the dream come from? It has to come from our own bank of experience, right? So if Brahman projects this universe time after time after time, there has to be some stuff to it that has to exist somewhere. Thakur talks about the housewife who saves these funny little things, seeds and this is seafoam and other things for use later. So he says in the same way, Brahman the Divine Mother has to keep all of these things. This is that asputomono, this involute mind in which everything exists in seed form, so that when Brahman dreams this dream, that there's some stuff there, there's some material, upadana, something out of which this dream can be woven. So this is where Swamiji is experiencing this universe floating, and he says that it's a mahakarana. This seed consciousness is involute mind. This also means that everything becomes a little bit hazy and unclear. This chaya shamo, this idea that things are seen without the same type of substance. For us, this world is so real. And the deeper states of consciousness, higher states of consciousness, then everything becomes a little hazy, a little dreamlike. It's not taken so seriously. It's seen from a distance. There's a very beautiful letter, one of the nicest letters of Swamiji's that he wrote to Josephine MacLeod. Now, in this letter, he's explaining a mood that came to him. And because we'll find that these different stages of experience that Swamiji is having as he's going into this Samadhi, that even in the waking state, we can enter into a mood where it feels the same way. So he's talking about the kind of mood that he entered into even while seeing this universe, even while with eyes wide open. He wrote to Josephine MacLeod, "Oh, it is so calm. My thoughts seem to come from a great, great distance in the interior of my own heart. They seem like faint, distant whispers, and peace is upon everything. Sweet, sweet peace." See, this is the thing, when we see things without that attachment, when we see things without that connection to them, we can feel the sweetness of it. There's a joy in detachment. There's a joy in transcendence. So he says, they seem like faint, distant whispers, and peace is upon everything. Sweet, sweet peace, like that one feels for a few moments just before falling into sleep, when things are seen and felt like shadows, the same term that he's using here. So in his meditation, these ideas, memories, we're picturing things, they're shadow-like. But even with eyes open, when the mind is pitched to a different level, also like shadows. So he says, when things are seen and felt like shadows, without fear, without love, without emotion, peace that one feels alone, surrounded with statues and pictures. Now, as I say, the earlier verse, he's just talking about seeing everything floating in space somehow. Now he's talking about this space of the mind, almost as if it's a clarification of the first, or he's trying to say that ultimately, even this external world that we see in the mind. Everything that we experience in and through the mind. So that really, we don't have to even decide if there's something outside of ourselves which is causing us to see it, or if we're simply seeing it. The result is the same. If we take a drug and we hallucinate and we see this room exactly as it is, there will be no difference. Because we're seeing both through the mind, whether there's an external cause or not. This is why the dream state, we had this discussion at lunchtime, why the dream state is not different from the waking state from the point of view of the experiencer. Because we never get to see what it is that causes that perception. We never see the thing in itself. We just know the experience of it. So this is what's called phenomenological aspect of things, just the experience of it. So whether it's caused by something outside or not, we experience everything through the mind. Even just from the point of view of perception. If I see an object, so let's assume that there is a physical object out there, and it comes, but it has to leave an impression on the back of the eye, which is upside down, which sends some impression to the mind and turns it right side up again, which somehow switches from the mind, from the brain to the mind, which we don't know how that works. And then it gets sent, and the mind, somehow in the mind's eye, we see something, almost like being in a submarine and looking at the periscope, and we think that we're seeing it here, but it's really from out there. So we see it within the mind, and the mind tells us that we're seeing an external object, but we're seeing it from within. We're seeing it as and through the mind itself. So that there's really no major distinction between this physical akasha, external space, and this akasha of consciousness, because everything we experience in consciousness with the help of the mind. And as I said before, the mind and consciousness are almost as inseparable as molecules of air and space itself. And really what we're doing when we're trying to make the mind quiet, we're simply going further and further out into outer space or deeper within the mind to areas where the molecules are so far apart that we can get in between them almost. We talk about rarefied atmosphere. What does it mean? It means that it's still air, but not with the molecules so close together. And because the molecules aren't close together, other things can't cling to them. the smells and the air pollution, all of that, they cling to the molecules. If there's just empty space, it's just pure empty space. There's nothing to cling to. So we have the same idea that everything takes place within consciousness with the help of the mind. Now, I spoke before about this. We have three types of akasha, three types of space. Mahakasha. This is the so-called external space, real space, whatever that means. Real space, that in which physical objects exist. Then this Chittakasha, this space of mind or thought, and Chidakasha, this pure space of consciousness. I want to read a small section from Swamiji's Raja Yoga. He says, everything that we see, or imagine, or dream, we have to perceive in space. This is the ordinary space called Mahakasha, or elemental space. Okay, so this is from our ordinary point of view. We're seeing external things. They can exist in this. There's some space in which they exist. When the yogi reads the thoughts of others or perceives supersensuous objects, he sees them in another sort of space called the Chittakasha, the mental space. When perception has become objectless, that means we've gone so far into outer space, there are no more thoughts, perceptions, nothing, there are no more molecules there, just that empty space in between everything else, or where nothing else exists. When perception has become objectless and the soul shines in its own nature, it is called the Chidakasha, or knowledge space. When the Kundalini is aroused, so now we're going back to the standpoint of this human body, and enters the canal of the Sushumna. Ordinarily it goes through the two Ida Pingala. When it goes straight through the center, we can have some spiritual experiences. When the Kundalini is aroused and enters the canal of the Sushumna, all the perceptions are in the mental space, Chittakasha. When it has reached that end of the canal, which opens out into the brain, that means Kundalini has gone through all of the chakras and goes to the Sahasrara, 1,000-petaled lotus. The objectless perception is in the knowledge space, that is Chidakasha. Objectless perception. That's the experience of nothing. When we see something that's not there, or there's nothing there to be seen, we can say. That means there's no thought, there's no perception. And from the point of view of our own experience, both perception and thought equally dwell within the mind. And when the mind isn't functioning, they both stop. Now we know in meditation we can stop external things just by closing off the senses. Close the eyes, we don't see anything, but thought is still there. So it's a separate type of technique and experience when thought itself stops. When thought itself stops, there's no perception, there's no experience, there's no emotion. Then we have this supersensuous experience of dwelling within this Chidakasha. This is that in dense darkness, I'm sorry I missed the song, in dense darkness, thy formless beauty sparkles. Another beautiful paradox. If it's formless, how can it be beautiful? And how can it sparkle? In dense darkness, that means there's nothing, there's emptiness, but there's it's not simply that deep sleep state where nothing is taking place. This is the vision of the absolute, of that absolute reality, which has nothing particular in it, which is pure transcendence. I keep going back to that term transcendence. I don't know what other term to use. Just going outside of ourselves. There's a whole idea of going outside of ourselves, getting rid of the false limitations of our own personality, our own ego. That in itself is the joyful state, that state of transcendence. Okay, now, so we have these three types of space. What we normally think of as external space, Mahakasha. Then the realm of inner space or cosmic mind. It can be either with our own inner space or cosmic mind, Chittakasha. And this includes external space. Because as I said, everything we see outside, we see through the mind. So it includes it. And it's really the source of the entire universe, this cosmic mind, that cosmic dreamer. Then we have this infinite pure consciousness of Brahman, this Chidakasha, which is really the ground for all of them. So in a sense, the Chidakasha is the main one. Within that is the Chitakasha, and then also what we think of as external is not really external. Everything exists within that consciousness. Now, what does all of this mean? We experience the world one way in our ordinary state of consciousness. We have a different type of experience in this meditative state, or when we're not in the meditative state, but the mind is raised to a different level. Then we see everything connected. We don't see things as external, independent, physical objects. We see everything as dwelling within that cosmic consciousness. Now, again, we were talking about this at lunchtime. If we go back to this dream analogy, that this is the cosmic dream of Brahman, then it's Brahman itself that projects this universe, and it's Brahman itself that becomes the actor within the dream. It's the same I, from this pure sense. One of them is sleeping, so there's nothing to identify with. But, so that I, that is really the sleeper, turns into the I as the actor in the dream. Now, where do all of the elements in the dream, where do they exist? Do they exist in Mahakasha, in this exterior space? There is no exterior space. There's only mental space. There's only mental space. Now, what about this idea of perception? When we have a dream, do we see objects in a dream? Yes. Who says no? Anybody say no? Who is the we? First of all, we wake up and say, well, I dreamt that I went to India, and I went to Belar Mutt, and I sat in the temple, and I saw a Thakur statue there, and all of that. I. Was there some I that first of all, we won't say that I really go there. Now, many ancient traditions will have this idea that, yes, the soul leaves the body when we sleep, and it travels someplace, and it goes there, and it sees it. We're scientific people, so we'll say, well, no, I dreamt it. I didn't really go there. There was no traveling through space that took place. I dreamt that I was there. Right? So if I didn't really go there, did I really see it? I mean, was it because my eyes were there and I was standing in front of the statue of Thakur that I could see the statue of Thakur? Is that how we explain it? Or when we wake up, will we say, no, it's not. It's not because the statue was real and I was real and perception was taking place. I dreamt it. I dreamt that I went to the Belar Mutt and that I went into the temple and I was sitting in front of this Thakur's image. So where is perception? There's no perception. No such thing as perception, no such thing as Mahakasha, as this exterior space. It's all mental space. From this one point of view, this is nothing we have to take terribly literally. All of the different schools of thought we have in Vedanta represent different models for us. And we can pick and choose, because there's not a single one that will answer all of our questions. There's not a single one. We talk about Advaita Vedanta as being, the most perfect philosophical system. Every system has flaws in it. If we analyze each and every system, we'll find flaws in it. Some bigger flaws, some smaller flaws, but the truth is beyond. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that the truth of Brahman, the experience of Brahman, is so far beyond all of these explanations. Even the mind has to come down so far, even for him to utter Om, let alone to try to explain that Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. These explanations that we have are simply explanations. This is a very important point. When Thakur says, "Joto mat tato pad," as many faiths, so many paths, he makes it very clear that we shouldn't confuse the faith, what is it? Mata. Mata means almost an opinion, almost a doctrine. These are secondary. Swamiji says these are secondary. We shouldn't confuse that with the real experience of God. This is something that helps us get there, and we can leave it behind afterwards. The truth is the experience. The truth is the realization. The other thing is an explanation. We're trying to describe something in logical terms, which we can do to a certain extent. And I don't mean to say that they're not important and they're not helpful, but there's nothing absolute. There's no absolute truth that can be expressed in relative terms. We're trying to explain everything within the confines of time, space, and causation, which means within Maya. Try and explain the relationship between the relative and the absolute in relative terms. It can't be done. So this is just one way of experiencing the world, which to Swamiji became very sharp and clear in the state of meditation. That he saw everything floating within consciousness, up and down, up and down. We have some beautiful verses. There's one verse from the Vivekananda. It says, "Mai, in me, akanda sukham hodho," in me, who is the ocean of unbroken joy, Satchidananda. In me, in that ocean, Bahuda Vishwavichayaha. These so many universes, like waves, Utpadyante Balyante, they're rising and they're falling. Maya Maratu Vibhramat. What causes waves to arise in the ocean? We only have the ocean. What can cause waves to arise? There has to be some wind. Why does this wind come? What is this wind? He says Maya. Because of Maya, this ocean of pure consciousness breaks into waves. How long does a wave last? We see it go up, then next second it goes down. What is each one of these? A whole cycle of the universe. And the God-realized soul says, yes, I see one universe coming after another, rising and falling like waves within me, this ocean of consciousness, this ocean of joy. So these were the experiences of these God-realized souls. That's we can hardly imagine this idea that not only is this cosmic dreamer dreaming all of this, but I am that cosmic dreamer. Really, who is the actor in the dream if not the one projecting the dream? We wake up and say, yeah, I had that dream. I dreamt that. When we say, I dreamt it, we don't mean the little guy running around in the dream. We mean the one who fell asleep. And did that dreamer choose to do it? It just comes. Why? If we're sleeping, what would cause us to dream? Nothing. If there's absolutely nothing going on, mind isn't functioning, we have to have some other explanation. So we have Maya. That's all that Maya is. Maya is our way of saying we don't know. We can't explain it logically. So we come up with some way of explaining it that we say, well, what is the nature of this Maya? Inscrutable. Yeah. There's another very interesting verse. It says, avidyayam avidyatvam idam evatu lakshanam. What is the characteristic of avidya? Avidya means ignorance or Maya. What is the one characteristic of it? Avidyatvam. It's unknowability. That it can't be explained. Yeah. Yat pramana asahishnutvam. Because it can't stand up to the light of any pramana, any standard of knowledge. We have ways of judging if something's real. If you can see it, if you can touch it, if you can infer it, all of that, there are different standards like that. It doesn't meet any of them. Anyata vastu sabhavit. Otherwise it would be something real. So this is what we mean by Maya, that don't try to explain it. We can't explain it. There are two things we can do with Maya. Maya is like darkness. What do we do if we want to examine the darkness? We can't examine the darkness because it's too dark. Right? We can't do it in the dark. Now, when we're using our mind, we're trying to examine darkness in the dark. We're within Maya, we're trying to understand Maya. So we think, let me just go and see, and we're in a completely dark room. The other thing is that we want to turn the light on it so we can see what the darkness looks like. It disappears. So this is the case with Maya. We can't explain it. All we can do is make it disappear. And then if somebody says, well, why did it come? How did it start? And everything, we say, well, there's nothing real to it. How can you ask about this Maya when we've found that it's just a phantom? It disappears. Which also isn't a very good answer for us. It's a clever answer. But for us, we still want to know, why did it happen this way? Why is this world this way? Why did God create such a world? Sometimes we'll say things like that. Or if this universe is projected out of Brahman, how did it turn out to be such a big mess? We can't answer these things. Swamiji, of course, likes to say, don't blame anybody else. It's because of our own ignorance, our own greed, our own desires, and all of these things. But still, this is the nature of Maya. Okay, how did I get into Maya? Okay, so we had that dream. Okay. Okay, so Swamiji writes the same thing. Ote bhashe dube punaha. So it rises, it floats for a while, and it disappears. So this is in this vast space, which is the mind. So now he's understanding, seeing everything as just a play of the mind. This boat is floating on the ocean. These waves are rising and falling, taking place in space. But the space is not this physical, external space. This is that space of consciousness. So the universe rises, it floats, and again, it submerges. So one universe comes after another. We can take it as one thought after another, one lifetime after another, one complete cycle after another, because time is another tricky thing. Once something is past, that whole question of length of time disappears. This time is a very great thing to meditate upon. If we ever want to develop some type of dispassion, we should think of everything in terms of time. Forget about this idea this world is unreal, this world is an illusion. But this idea that this world is just floating, passing show. It's just going by. I often think that the length of time it took for, say, for me to come from Boston this morning to come here and speak and everything is no different from the length of time that it took from when I was born to right now. Each one is about that long. Depending on how good my memory is, I may be able to remember, a lot of things, but really, once it's gone and in a flash. This is why Sri Ramakrishna, he very often used this expression, Dudin, this universe, it lasts for 2 days. Not literally 2 days, but it means that it's just flying by. In Gita, we have these beautiful verses about time. There's all destroying time. Arjuna wants to know who this divine being is, who he sees in the universal form. And Sri Krishna says to him that Kalosme, I'm time, all destroying time. Nothing will last. Everything will go in a flash. That nothing can withstand the ravages of time, no matter how permanent anything looks. One day it'll be gone, and forget about how long it took for that. Once it's gone, it's gone. This question of time is 100% relative. So this is the experience of these souls who have some type of realization. They'll see it with eyes open, but again, it goes back to this experience of Samadhi, when the mind, in meditation, when the mind is going up, Kundalini is rising to new levels, then this play, cosmic play of consciousness takes place within oneself. Not even in this cosmic consciousness. We feel that within our own awareness. Of course, at this point, this distinction between our own mind or consciousness and this cosmic consciousness, this also starts to disappear. And the only thing that that will remain. The universe will float. And where does it float? In this consciousness we know, but he uses this term aham srota, this stream or current of I. Now, consciousness, this play between personal and impersonal in consciousness is a very interesting thing. When we say that there's no I in consciousness, that it's impersonal, we run the risk of thinking that consciousness is something other than ourselves, which is wrong. When we say that this I is within it, we run the risk of thinking that there's something personal about it. This is the strange thing about it. The personal aspect of consciousness is that it's always aware of itself, self-consciousness. But there's nothing particular or individual about it. This is I hate to keep going back to it, but this is another paradox. This is why we have to just feel our way around these Vedantic concepts. They don't always fit so easily in the categories of the mind. So this consciousness itself is both personal and impersonal, and because there's awareness. Now, what's the difference between saying I'm aware of it and there's awareness? Not much difference. Only when I say there's awareness, there's the experience is there. I'm seeing it as this impersonal witnessing consciousness, being the one watching it. But I am that. So either way, it's not a perfect description. I experience it, or it's simply being experienced, not by somebody else. So because this consciousness, it means awareness. It means self-awareness at the same time. So Swamiji says that it's floating on this stream of I, and this I is that witness. This I is that consciousness devoid of everything except this knowledge of itself, the self-awareness, self-reflexiveness. There was a great French philosopher named Jean-Paul Sartre who said that all consciousness is self-consciousness, otherwise it's unconsciousness. It's a very beautiful thing to think. This is the nature of consciousness. It has to be known. Otherwise it's a thing. It's not a thing. This Brahman is not an entity. It's hard for us to think of consciousness without a being that's conscious. But just as pure consciousness as the absolute. It's a very difficult concept, but it's the one thing that exists when everything else disappears. This is the one thing that doesn't have a ground, that doesn't require anything else to explain its existence. This is the one self-existent thing. Everything else is dependent, or made of parts, or is created in time. So Brahman is the only thing that qualifies that way. So this universe is floating within the stream of I consciousness, that inner space. Then the mind goes a little bit higher, and what happens is that even this disappears. Dhire, dhire. Gradually, this mind is gradually going higher and higher, or deeper and deeper, however we understand it. And then we had this chaya, this chaya shoma, everything is shadow-like. Now, all of these shadows, chaya dol, all of these shadows, they're entering back into this cosmic womb, this mahalaya, this is the causal state of existence, so that nothing exists at that time. We reach a state of awareness where basically the universe disappears. It happens in this state of consciousness, in this state of meditation, and it happens to the God-realized soul with eyes open also, in that type of ecstatic experience. There's another wonderful verse from Vivekananda. This is the young disciple after he has that highest realization. He says, Kvagatam kenavanitam kutralinam idam jagat adhunaiva maya drishtam nasti kim mahad adbhutam. He says, where did the universe go? This is the young disciple. The Guru is there. He just had that experience. His mind is just coming down, still not aware. Just as Swamiji said, where's my body? When he had that. So he says, where is the universe gone? Who has taken it away? Into what has it merged? Adhuna eva, I just saw it a second ago. It was just there. Now, Nastikim, what happened? Did it disappear? Doesn't it exist anymore? What a strange thing has happened. This is the experience that the disciple is having. Now, if we look at the life of Sri Ramakrishna, what is his first vision of the Divine Mother like? What is in his own words, his own description? He says, the buildings with their different parts, the temple, and everything else vanished from my sight. So this is with eyes open. Otherwise, how can they vanish? If it's one thing, if he's in a state of meditation, then of course everything vanishes, leaving no trace whatsoever. And in their stead, I saw a limitless, infinite, effulgent ocean of consciousness. Now at this point, whether his eyes are open or closed, it doesn't matter. That experience that he's having, or the state of Samadhi, they're one and the same at this point. And Swamiji also, when he had that experience at the touch of Sri Ramakrishna, and he says, this was his second visit to Sri Ramakrishna, he placed his right foot on my body. The touch at once gave rise to a novel experience within me. With eyes open, he says, with eyes open, I saw the walls and everything in the room whirled rapidly and vanished into naught, and the whole universe, together with my individuality, was about to merge in an all-embracing, mysterious void. So what's left at that point? Sri Ramakrishna, Swamiji says, the only thing left at that point is this flow of I, this I consciousness. The object is no longer there. There's only awareness of self. Now we can say that this is that experience of savikalpa samadhi. Vikalpa, not that there's so much going on in the mind, but this one vritti, this one thought, we can say, is there. This idea of awareness of one's own existence. How are we doing? 4 o'clock.
But you have another
10-15 minutes, okay. Okay. Because now
one more line is left.
we have to get to Nirvikalpa Samadhi. We can't stop. We can't stop here. This is now we get to the big stuff.
And after that we don't need to stop. Everything stops.
Everything will stop on its own after that. Okay. Now,
whether it will stop or not, that also we will not know.
yeah, that's the thing. And we won't care.
We won't care.
Right. Okay. So, now this poem, of course, would be something spectacular if it stopped here, but it doesn't. So Swamiji says that this ceaseless stream of I, ceaseless. What is the word he used? Ananta? Niranta. So, Niranta. Not a single gap in between. Now we know there may be gaps, but this feeling that I, this feeling of self-awareness is there. He says that also stops, and the void has merged into the void. Now, this is a beautiful expression. He doesn't say Brahman merges into Brahman. He says the void merges into the void. If we have some concept of something positive, even we read in the Kathopanishad that it's like pure water being poured into pure water, something like that, then even then the amount of water will increase. Of course, that's not what it means in the Upanishad, but it's only when we have this idea of perfect emptiness. Emptiness merging into emptiness. Then there's no idea of one thing having to mix with something else, because it's that same thing, the space within all the different jars. We break all of the jars, that's all that we've done. It's not really the empty space inside the one jar will merge with the empty space in the whole universe. There's only one space. So it just means that we're having that experience. We're entering into that oneness. The void, which means my own personal individual consciousness has reached a contentless state. And this pure consciousness of Brahman is also contentless. There's nothing within it because it's pure. It's just that pure awareness. If we can imagine the sun shining with nothing else existing, it doesn't have anything to illumine. It's just pure luminosity itself. So the void is merging into the void, and this ceaseless stream of I that stops. So what takes place here is impossible to say. Now we're in this realm of Chidakasha. No longer within the cosmic mind or anything like that. Now just this realm of pure awareness. Our own individual consciousness is devoid of any content. Brahman consciousness is devoid of any content. So void has merged in the void. Now, who is having this experience? Right. Who is having this experience? We understand that this is such a radical experience that our whole concept of I will have to be, it'll be shattered and rearranged. It'll be shattered and rearranged. That coming down from that state, there'll be a whole different understanding of who we are and who everyone else is. And our relationship with ourselves, our relationships with others, everything will completely change. And that experience that we had will be beyond our ability to describe and to explain to anyone. We talked about the salt doll before. Sri Ramakrishna says that there's a doll that's just made out of hardened salt, just like a rock out of salt. And this doll wants to go down to the bottom of the ocean and come back and report how deep the ocean was. So he says, by the time it reaches the bottom of the ocean, it's completely dissolved. It's become one with the ocean. Now, who is there to come back and explain that experience? Now, for us, it may be that we have that nirvikalpa state and we don't come back at all. Or if we come back transformed, and if we come back from that state, it'll be somehow through some divine grace. This is another great mystery. Sri Ramakrishna talks about this nirvikalpa samadhi as really our entranceway into that ultimate merging with Brahman. He doesn't speak about it so much as we have that experience, we come down and we go on with life. We can have lots of experiences that will give us illumination. We can have this savikalpa samadhi. We can get a glimpse. We can stick our heads over the. We're climbing up to the roof. We can be on the last rung. We can peek over there. We can have that whole experience. But if we really go up to the top, if we really dive in that ocean, then only through divine grace do we come back from that. This is a very difficult thing to try to fathom, and most of us will say, then who wants it? Right? Yeah, we would rather have some nice experience and come back and tell all our friends about it. I had this vision of God, it was so nice, so wonderful, this and that. But it's only when we reach that point where we don't care for anything else. It's a very rare thing, where we have this perfect dispassion, where this world has no hold on us anymore. Otherwise we won't have that experience. If there's the slightest desire to come back, slightest desire to experience the world, even to help the world, even as a good desire, then we'll come back. Then we'll come back. And Sri Ramakrishna says it's like in the village, sometimes these boys would catch a mongoose, and they were just playing with it, and they would tie a brick to the tail of the mongoose, and they'd put it in a little enclosure where there's a little brick wall that the mongoose can climb up, and just when it gets to the top of it, then the weight of the brick will pull it down. So he says that until and unless we're ready for that final experience, that final merging in Brahman, where this universe means nothing to us anymore, then we'll come down from that state. We have to reach the point where there's absolutely no desire to dwell within this body anymore. Then we can have that type of experience. So this state, this highest state, Sri Ramakrishna says, again, sometimes God effaces even the trace of I. Then one experiences Jada Samadhi. That means we become like a lifeless thing. Or Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That experience cannot be described. A salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean, but before it had gone far into the water, it melted away. It became entirely one with the water of the ocean. Then who was to come back and tell the ocean's depths? So Swamiji uses this term, Bhavang Manasagochara, a very common term that we find beyond the realm of mind and speech. And what do we find the Upanishads when they try to explain or describe Brahman? They say, Yato Vacho Nivartan, that from which the mind, the speech comes back, Aprapya Manasasa, the speech and mind, they return. That means unsuccessful in their attempt. The mind is unsuccessful in its attempt to understand it, and speech is unsuccessful in its attempt to describe it. So this is that ultimate state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Swamiji was a special soul. He had a special mission to perform in life. Perhaps this is why Thakur kept a slight veil of Maya, so that he wouldn't remain merged in that state forever, so that the mind could come down from that. For us, the very last thing we have to worry about is going into the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi and not coming down from it. I want to make that very clear. The least of our worries. We may have other worries, I think, but we're all capable of having some glimpse of when the mind becomes quiet. All we need is a glimpse to be convinced of the truth of all of this. And when all of our karma is spent, when all of our desires are gone, when we're ready to make that final journey, then we can enter into that state, and we'll gladly not look back or care about entering back into this physical realm. So, thank you very much for your patience for all of this. If no one understands anything that I've said, we can go back to the very final line, Bhoje Pran, Bhoje Jar. That means that the only people who will really understand will understand through the heart, not through the mind. We have some feeling for some sense of this, and then of course a little experience of it. But it has to attract us. Through the mind, we can get close to it, and we can appreciate it. They're beautiful ideas and everything, but it's something that we experience in the depths of our hearts. Thank you.